Glazer said, okay, you want a bold prediction? Here's one for you. The New York Giants trade Odell Beckham Jr. Now, this is 6 months after giving Odell Beckham Jr. a massive contract extension to the tune of something like $90 million over 5 years. This is 1 year after the entire organization was engulfed in drama and soap opera and rumor about whether or not they'd trade Odell last offseason. And here's Jay Glazer, a man, yes, who acknowledges he's making a bold prediction, but a man who knows something of which he speaks, giving you his prediction that the New York Giants could trade Odell Beckham Jr. Now, in response to that, Odell, we think, tweeted. We think it's in response to this rumor. We think we know what it means. We think a lot of things. But I don't read emoji very well, so I'm going to ask you to help me out. I don't read Twitter very well, to be honest. So when Odell Beckham Jr. tweets out, smiley face with a zipper across its mouth, I know he's saying something like, hear no evil, see no evil. I'm saying nothing here, no words from me. And then it's followed up by a blushing, smiling emoji. I don't know what those two together equal. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to take from that. I'm not sure what Odell's saying or if he's saying something about Glazer's prediction. But this has lit everyone on fire once again in New York City. This has lit the NFL on fire because now you have not one but two of the best wide receivers in the NFL possibly available in trade. That's Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham Jr. Who'd you rather have? Which one would you give up a number one pick for? Who would you rather build your team around? 888-729-3776. You can answer that question. But I want to get back to this idea of a plan, okay? If the New York Giants' plan is to trade Odell Beckham Jr., they are morons. I can't make heads or tails of it. I can't make sense of it. And let me tell you something. Anybody that's gotten to know me whose eyes have glazed across a television screen have probably seen me in times wearing a number 4 blue and silver jersey. You know that I have a little bit of bias out of anything towards Dallas. You know I grew up outside and grew up rooting for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm here telling you with my biases out front. You trade Odell Beckham Jr., you're a bunch of morons. If you can tell me you have the plan, if you know of a plan, a sequence of events that you plan to unfold, that this fits into a part of, okay, I'm wide open. I'm here to listen. But you got to lay that out for me, man, because here's what it looks like right now. I want you to hear. This is what it looks like right now. It looks like a year ago you pass on the opportunity for a franchise quarterback to take a running back, a very, very good running back in Saquon Barkley. But you pass on a quarterback who's going to sit across town in green for the Jets, I believe, for the next decade, putting them in the playoffs and possibly in contention for years to come, because that's what quarterbacks do. You pass on that. You give another year to Eli. You have weapons around. And if you told me, well, the plan, Will, is to build up these assets, build up all of these big-time players like Saquon, like Odell, like Ingram, like Sterling Shepard, and then get your quarterback on a rookie deal, right? Your cheap rookie quarterback, and let him be the place you're saving. Let him be the place you're under budget. Well, then I might make sense of it. If you told me the plan is Dwayne Haskins at 6, or if you're super creative, Kyler Murray at 6. If you told me that's the plan, I'd go, okay, man, I get it. But if you trade Odell Beckham Jr., how does that fit into the plan? How does that fit into having a rookie quarterback on the field in Dwayne Haskins or Kyler Murray without the expensive, yes, but big-time assets like Odell and Saquon? I can't make heads or tails of it. And let me tell you something else. Not only is this coming from somebody who's acknowledging to you their Cowboys biases, but I'm also telling you this from somebody who's overcoming 2 other instincts I have, okay? 2 other knee-jerk reactions I have when it comes to evaluating players. Number 1, I almost always defer to intangibles over talent. I almost always revere players who make sacrifices, do things off the field, demonstrate work ethic, good teammates. I almost always defer to the Tom Brady's of the world over the Aaron Rodgers of the world. I'm not enamored with arm talent. I'm not enamored with 40-yard dash speed. Not in the way others are. I'm more enamored with I don't eat tomatoes and play in Tom 41. I'm more enamored with everything from your diet to your marriage to your off-season workouts working cohesively towards winning championships and not towards diva wide receivers. But I'm overcoming that here because I realize how good Odell is and how he fits into a plan. And second, the other instinct I have is I didn't think in the past big-time diva wide receivers are necessary to win championships. I look across at the Patriots and other teams think, why do you need a receiver like Odell? Why do you need a receiver like Antonio Brown? Who wins with that? But I'll tell you this. In the past year, I've seen the Dallas Cowboys try that philosophy, fail with that philosophy. Trade for Amari Cooper and demonstrate the value of a number one. And not only how it changes your quarterback, but changes your offense. So I'm overcoming two instincts to say, you're morons if you trade Odell Beckham Jr. You're morons if you can't explain the plan. But maybe you can. Maybe you can tell me how this all works together. Maybe you're like Hannibal in the A-Team. You love it when a plan comes together, but you just got to explain it to me. 888-729-3776. Now, is it real? Are we all building this on a foundation of sand? Are we building this on a foundation that blows over with the slightest bit of factual storm in its face? Or is Jay Glazer onto something? Well, here's the thing. Dave Gettleman, GM of the Giants, was asked right after the season, is Odell part of your future? Is Odell for sure a New York Giant? And he gave an answer. Now, I want you to listen to this, and I want you to tell me, is this an answer? Is this a commitment to Odell Beckham Jr.? Take it away, Kat.
Are you committed to him being here in 2019? Are you open to trade ideas?
We didn't sign him to trade him, if that's what you're asking me.
So he'll be here.
You heard what I said.
We didn't sign him to trade him. Okay, let's just analyze what Dave Gettleman did there with a question about Odell Beckham's future. First, he laughed. Always a little bit dismissive. It's meant to convey the ridiculousness of the question, or it's meant to convey in no way we would consider it. But he had a chance after that to not laugh, but say those words. Instead, he said, we did not sign him to trade him. Look, guys, you got to be able to speak GM, which isn't far off of politician. You got to be able to speak languages of people who don't say exactly what they mean. And I don't even begrudge them of it because they have other incentives, other things, motivations pushing them. There's reasons they may not tell you everything they want you to say or want you to hear. We did not sign him to trade him. I don't hear definitively Odell's here for the future. And then when pushed on that, because the question asker followed up with, are you saying Odell's part of the future? He said, you heard what I said. I got to tell you, man, I heard what you didn't say. You didn't say Odell's definitively part of our future. You didn't say for sure Odell's part of the rebuild here. You didn't say there is no way in hell we're going to trade Odell Beckham Jr. Didn't say those things. So what's the plan? 888-729-3776. It's Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. Smith today on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. I'll be hanging out with you today and tomorrow. And we're going to be joined in just a moment by ESPN Radio New York host and former New York Giant Chris Canty. I want to run this by Canty and ask him what he thinks the plan is in New York. And how does trading Odell possibly fit into that? But let's take your calls for a minute. Let's hit Ricardo in Virginia. What's up, Ricardo?
Hey, what's up, my man, Mr. Cain?
Yeah. What do you got going today? What do you got on Odell?
Man, listen, this is one of my things here. I believe, honestly, they'd be stupid to trade away that guy not knowing who their quarterback's going to be. That's number one. Number two, I think they should have got rid of Eli Manning. I think he should have been gone anyway. They got weapons on offense. They just need they need a nice quarterback who's going to be able to throw that ball downfield and get those guys available and open. I mean, they got a plethora of weapons that they can use. I think the problem last year was Eli, honestly. I think it was Eli. If I had to take my pick, it's definitely going to be Odell Beckham over Antonio Brown.
All right.
And the reason why I say that is because, first of all, Odell is a lot younger.
Right.
All right. We know what he can do. Antonio's got too much drama going on right now. I don't even see how Pittsburgh think they're going to get a first-round draft pick. I can tell you that they ain't going to get that.
All right, Ricardo, I got you. Let me get in on all the things you're saying. Thank you for the call, Ricardo. I appreciate it. Again, it's Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. Smith today on ESPN Radio. I just don't understand it either. Man, and I just think I want to reemphasize the things I'm overcoming to give you this opinion, because here's the deal. I'm overcoming A, Cowboys bias, B, wide receiver bias, C, anti-drama bias, because as much as Ricardo says Antonio Brown comes with some drama, let's not pretend. Odell comes with some drama too, okay? We got to be real about that. And yet, overcoming all of that, all of those biases, I don't want to see how you make sense of trading Odell Beckham Jr. Let me add another one. I think everybody should always be available for trade. I think business should always be open. I think you should always be open to being blown away. Oh, you got what? 3 number ones you want to offer? Okay, now we're talking here. But that's part of a rolling plan here, man. That you can make sense of. That you can tell me the sequence of events. That is a man with a master plan. But right now, reports are Antonio Brown, while the Steelers want a number 1 pick for him, the league is suggesting it's a 2 or a 3, a second-day draft pick. Last year, the Giants said they wanted 2 1s for Odell Beckham Jr. This year, you're going to be able to get that when the Antonio Brown market is a second-day draft pick. It doesn't add up to, all right, I'm open for business and you're blowing me away. It adds up to bupkis. I don't see the plan. I don't see it making sense. Let's hit up Tristan. What's up, Tristan? You're on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Tristan, you there? We lost Tristan. All right. Let's try Barbara then. Barbara, what's up, Barbara? You're on the Stephen A. Smith Show.
Hello?
Oh.
Hey, how's it going?
What's up?
Is this the Stephen A. Show?
It is the Stephen A. Smith Show, hosted today by Will Cain, filling in for Stephen A. What's up, man? What do you have on Odell?
Yeah. Nah, my man Will Cain. I just wanted to talk to him about Odell for a little.
What do you got? The Giants looking to consider trading Odell Beckham Jr.?
Yeah, why don't we trade Odell Beckham Jr. for Antonio Brown?
Oh, why? Yeah, well, I don't know. Let me just see for a second if I could explore that. Well, would you trade a young wide receiver for an old wide receiver? Would you trade a wide receiver that has no potential for suspension for one that's being investigated by a league for a domestic dispute? Would you trade a wide receiver who's entering his prime for one who's on the last 2 years of his prime? Most wide receivers tail off by the age of 33. I don't know. That's just a few reasons why you wouldn't trade Odell Beckham Jr. for Antonio Brown. Let's talk to a guy who covers the Giants on a daily basis, a guy who hosts Humpty and Canty on ESPN Radio New York, a guy who played for the Giants. Let's talk to Chris Canty. What's up, Canty? You're on the Stephen A. Smith Show, man.
How you doing, man?
I'm good. Man, what do you make of all these reports? And they're not reports so much as Jay Glazer, a guy who knows what he's talking about, giving you a bold prediction. The Giants could trade Odell Beckham Jr. Here's what I said, Canty. I would love your response. Just fit that into a plan for me. Fit that into a master plan. I can't see how it would make sense in any way for the Giants to consider such an idea.
Well, I can't make a lot of sense of it either, Will. The only thing I will say is maybe it's Jay Glazer reading the tea leaves and the fractured relationship between Pat Shurmur and Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, Odell criticized Pat Shurmur after the Philadelphia Eagles game, questioning some of the play calling. Obviously, that was a game that they were in control of in the first half, and then they lost it in the second half. And I think that from that point, they're on to get on the same page with them. And so from that perspective, you can understand why some people will be led to believe there is the possibility that Odell Beckham Jr. could be moved this offseason. Also got to consider with the contract the Giants gave him last offseason, it's a very tradable contract. It really is when you start looking at the breakdowns of it, because, yeah, it is $16.75 million in base salary this year, but from that number it drops down to 14 for a couple of years, and then it goes to 13. So he's under contract through 2023. I think he's just even more valuable now that there's so many years of team control left on that deal.
Yeah, but, man, most franchises hope for the chance of having a young quarterback on a cheap deal, right? A competent to great quarterback on a cheap deal. The idea then is, well, we can surround him with talent, and that's going to be our formula for the Super Bowl. We'll have savings at quarterback that we'll spend in other places. If that's what the Giants were doing with, say, Dwayne Haskins or Kyler Murray, you'd still want to spend that money on things to help him out, like Odell and Saquon and offensive linemen and other talent around him. But if you're selling Odell, what's the plan? Like, you're going to put Dwayne Haskins out there? You're going to run Eli again with subpar talent to what you could put out there for him?
Well, I mean, the only thing that I can think of that where it would make sense to move Odell is to be able to put yourself in position to be able to acquire your next franchise quarterback. Because as good as Odell Beckham Jr. is...
But you're already there. You already have the 6th pick.
Well, you already have the 6th pick, but if you're trying to put yourself in a situation to get the top-rated quarterback in this year's draft, based on what we've seen in prior drafts, you're probably going to have to get inside of the top 5, more likely than not inside the top 3. So that costs draft capital, or it costs other assets, and Odell Beckham Jr. is an asset for Dave Gettleman. So I think the Giants are in an interesting position because what's Odell Beckham Jr.'s value if you don't have a quarterback that can get him the ball?
Man, if you passed on Sam Darnold for Saquon Barkley and the next year used Odell as a chip to get high enough to draft Dwayne Haskins, that would be one hell of an admission of a mistake from a year ago. If you were somebody else in the league, Canty, and again, talking to Chris Canty here on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio, and you had the opportunity to go after Odell Beckham Jr. or Antonio Brown, both now potentially on the trade market, and we understand why we're talking about Odell in this respect, who would you rather have the opportunity to bring into your team?
Well, give me the younger player, Will. I mean,
Right.
Listen, Odell is, in his mid-20s. AB is, at 30 years old. So, I mean, I look at that as a situation as I'm going to have Odell for more years than I am Antonio Brown. Now, Antonio Brown has been the most productive receiver in the National Football League this decade. But, I mean, you can make an argument for both players on being the best at their position. But, I mean, it's a situation where, look, I don't know where AB's headspace is at. I mean, he's got some off-the-field allegations now that the NFL is probably going to look to investigate. You don't know what's going to come of that. So I would feel more comfortable trading for Odell Beckham Jr., even understanding that the price is going to be a little bit steeper in terms of what I'm going to have to send back to the Steelers. But I would feel more comfortable with Odell.
Chris Canty, former New York Giant, host on ESPN Radio New York here on the Stephen A. Smith Show with Will Cain. I got to get to one more thing with you before I lose you. What did you think of the Denver Broncos making a trade for Joe Flacco from the Baltimore Ravens yesterday? Flacco's the first domino to fall before Foles, before Bridgewater, before anyone else. What do you think about the Broncos prioritizing Flacco?
Well, I thought it was a solid deal for both sides. When you look at it from the Denver perspective, I think that John Elway gave himself a little bit of insurance, knowing that, he probably wasn't going to be able to get Nick Foles from Philadelphia. I know there was some conversations earlier in the week that they had, but then they realized the price in terms of draft capital was going to be a little bit too steep. So I think that John Elway went with the move and got himself another bridge quarterback. I mean, you can compare what Joe Flacco has done the last 3 years to what Case Keenum has done, but I think from a physical tools perspective, Joe Flacco represents a little bit of an upgrade at the position. But John Elway still got to figure out who's going to be the long-term solution at the quarterback position. From the Ravens, I think it makes sense. Listen, Joe Flacco was going to count a lot of money toward their cap. They get to save roughly $10 million on their cap, and Lamar Jackson is firmly entrenched as the starting quarterback there. He doesn't have to look over his shoulder. So I think the deal makes sense for both sides.
All right. I could not disagree more, by the way. But I'm going to have to let you go.
Well,
I'll get to
it
that.
wouldn't be the first time that you're wrong. So, I mean, I get it.
Well, okay, they're telling me I can go with you one more question. So then let's do that head-to-head. Man, I can't make any sense of John Elway making a move for Joe Flacco, okay? I think you moved from Case Keenum, mediocre, to Joe Flacco, mediocre. Contract values in the same range, which is fairly expensive for a mediocre quarterback. And if you're using him as a stopgap, a bridge quarterback, to a rookie that you're going to draft, Chris, why would you bring in Joe Flacco, a guy who was not about that last year in Baltimore when they were trying to bring along Lamar Jackson? Reports are he wasn't interested in helping. So why would you not just use Case Keenum as your stopgap quarterback? Which, by the way, last year showed those guys usually last about 6, 7, 8 games before they yield to the rookie. Why would you bring in an expensive mediocre quarterback that you had to trade for in Flacco to do that?
Listen, Will, I can understand the argument to be made that Joe Flacco is not worth the hit that you're going to take on your salary cap in terms of what you have allocated at the quarterback position, considering Case Keenum and what his cap number is this season, even if they move on from him. I mean, they're allocating a lot of money. It's upwards of $28 million in cap space toward the quarterback position. So that would be a lot of money to put toward quarterback. But, I mean, ultimately, you have to realize that Joe Flacco is better than Case Keenum. Like, Joe Flacco is a better quarterback than Case Keenum. I know it's hard to make that argument with the numbers, But, I mean, I played with Joe Flacco and I played against Case Keenum. It's an easier game plan going up against Case than it is Joe Flacco. So, I mean, from John Elway's perspective, he doesn't know that he's going to be able to put himself in position to get his next franchise quarterback. So I think this gives him a little bit of insurance in case he can't get his guy. It gives him more flexibility at the top of this year's draft. He doesn't have to lock in on a guy that he doesn't necessarily believe in with that 10th overall pick. So, again, I look at John Elway sending a 4th-round pick to the Baltimore Ravens as insurance and as an upgrade in terms of the bridge that you're going to use to get to your next franchise guy.
All right, man. Well, I'm glad we got to do it face-to-face, or at least voice-to-voice. Appreciate you jumping on with me today. Always enjoy talking to you, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Will.
That's Chris Canty, former New York Giant, former Dallas Cowboy, former Baltimore Raven, and host on ESPN Radio in New York. All right. That's been Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. Russell Westbrook and your boy Stephen A. made their case for NBA MVP today. I'm going to tell you coming up why they're both wrong on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio and ESPN News.
Learn what affects your credit scores and what you can do to improve them with Credit Karma. Maybe you need to dispute an error in your credit report, or you're paying too much interest. Credit
in just a minute here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. But Russell Westbrook is an interesting dude. Last night, he gave his opinion on a few things, including, as I said, NBA MVP, but he said something about the critics, which at times, I've been one of those critics of Russell Westbrook. Not this year, though. This year, the way Russ plays the game, the triple-doubles he's accumulating, the stats he's compiling seem to be going hand-in-hand with wins for the Oklahoma City Thunder. While in the past, he's been accused of being a compiler, a stat aggregator, and prioritizing that perhaps over winning, this year, along with Paul George, the Thunder's doing really well. So you would think the critics are taking notice. The critics are receding like the tide. But instead, Russ said this, whether you're there or you're not there, it's like water on a duck's back to him. Listen to Russ on his critics.
Nah, I've been blessed with the title not to give up. So, and I don't. Regardless of what happens, it doesn't change the way I live. It doesn't change what I think. It doesn't change anything. I have an unbelievable family, great friends, unbelievable life. Unbelievable job. Make a lot of money in my job. I'm extremely blessed, thankful, humble. Hasn't been in trouble. Don't cause no problems. I'm perfectly fine. I'm living the best life. I can't complain one bit. So he say, she say, what somebody say about me, what they say about shooting, passing, dribbling. I don't really care. Every year is something. They got to make up something about me, which is fine. It's good. One thing I always know is if they're not talking about you, then you're not doing something right.
Russell Westbrook on his critics. He, quote, has been blessed with the talent of not giving an F. I heard Stephen A. say today he didn't believe him. I do. Not caring what others think of you is a hard thing to do. It's an easy thing to say and a hard thing to live. Most people think not caring what others say manifests in like, I'm going to rebel. I'm going to dress differently. Watch me be contrarian. Watch me be different than you. Watch me wear all black. Watch me go goth. Watch me do the opposite of what everybody else does. But that's really you caring so much about everybody else that you're trying to obviously be different. It's not being so confident in your skin that you just are who you are and letting the chips fall where they may. It's not giving an F about what everybody says, which isn't a goal anyway. You know, whether or not you're Russell Westbrook or it's you driving home from your lunch break or back to work from your lunch break or you listening at work right now, streaming the Stephen A. Smith Show on the ESPN app, or you watching me right now on ESPN News, or me talking to you, we don't want to be somebody who doesn't care about anybody and what they think of us. What we want is to be somebody who's very selective about the people we respect, very selective about the criticism that we receive, very selective about what we pay attention to, and most importantly, what we change for. And I believe Russ is that kind of guy. I listen to that. I see the way he behaves. I see the way he plays. I see the way he carries himself. And I will be somebody, and trust me, I will criticize him when I think truth requires it. But I would imagine I'm not in those 4, 5, 6 people he cares an F about and their criticism. And good for him. I just hope he's picking the right people to listen to. Now comes the criticism. By the way, ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Pick from a range of coverage options with the Name Your Price tool to find a price that works for you. Russell has nominated somebody for NBA MVP. Okay, let's do this, Russ. You ready for some criticism? Your turn first. You make your argument, Russ. Who's NBA MVP? Play it, Cat.
This year, in my opinion, P's been very consistent to be able to do the same thing every night. It's not easy to do. It's not something that I don't take for granted. I think a lot of people around the world that don't play basketball, that don't play sports, don't understand how hard it is to be consistent and get your mind right every night to be able to do something. So for him to be able to do that and stay on the path to be able to do that, he's definitely the front runner for my MVP.
Russell Westbrook casting his vote for his teammate Paul George as NBA MVP. Now, Paul George is having an amazing season. Paul George, in the words of many, is the best two-way player right now. Defense, offense. Getting his shots, scoring over 30. Among the top 5 in the league in steals. Fitting in perfectly with Westbrook, by the way. Turns out it wasn't Kevin Durant that's the perfect running mate, perhaps for Russell Westbrook, but it's Paul George. In any kind of list you're putting together on NBA MVP right now, you've got to include Paul George. But at number 1, is that really the case that we're going to make right now? Is that the one that wins the day? Is that the one that wins the league? Let's stack the deck, because it's not just Russell Westbrook that believes so. It's your normal host here. 1 to 3. It's Stephen A. Smith, who normally hosts this Stephen A. Smith show today, but not today. It's Will Cain filling in. Let's hear from Stephen A. Who's the NBA MVP right now, Stephen A.?
When we have Paul George going a stretch where he's averaging 39, when we see him dropping 30 like it's going out of style.
Love me some Paul George.
By the way, he's not 6'11", and he's defending, if not 94 feet, definitely half that, because he's playing on ball. We're not even questioning at this moment in time that Paul George is the best two-way player in basketball. We're not even questioning that right now. Not right now.
I don't think it's a question at all.
Not right now.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you want to two-way, one-way.
And by the way, he's in the West. By the way, he's in the well. That's your opinion. It's not. Yeah, it's not hard for me, Paul. When I look at what, and then I think about this. We'll find out.
That's Stephen A. Smith on First Take today. The third voice you could hear there besides Max Kellerman was stud right now, second-year player of the Sacramento Kings, De'Aaron Fox. He was also talking up Paul George. So let's call it 3. Let's make it 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's make it Russell Westbrook, Stephen A. Smith, and De'Aaron Fox. I'm not sure if Fox formally cast his vote for Paul George. But there you got 3 strong voices, 3 people obviously that know basketball that say Paul George is your current NBA MVP. And I'm here to say I disagree. I don't think so. I think he's on the list. In fact, I'll tell you exactly where I think he is. Here's your top 3 list right now for NBA MVP, where we stand today. At third in the NBA MVP race is the guy who has gone now 31 straight games with 30 points per game. The guy who is now tied Wilt Chamberlain's second longest streak of 30-point games. You got to get to 60-something to really get Wilt in your sights. But James Harden now has tied Wilt's second longest streak for 30-point games. But here's what really, really is fascinating about James Harden, and this was tweeted out by a guy named Rob Kimball last night. He said, of all the guys who's ever averaged over 36 points a game, and there's only 4 names. It's Chamberlain, it's Jordan, it's James Harden, and it's Elgin Baylor. All the guys who's ever averaged over 36 points a game, Harden is dead last in field goal attempts, free throw attempts. That's got to be shocking, right? And minutes per game. He's, among all those names scoring 36 a game, he's last in field goal attempts, free throw attempts, and minutes per game. What do you take away from that? He's being efficient. James Harden is extremely efficient, and yet he only comes in third on this NBA MVP list. In second is their man, Paul George. He's second on your list right now of NBA MVPs. I acknowledge how bad he is. I acknowledge he can play both ways, and you got to honor both ends of the court, and that's one of the reasons Paul George is ahead of James Harden. But he can only climb as high as second because there's one other guy that's willing his team to victory, one other guy who looks to be unstoppable. I'll tell you who that guy is in just a moment on the Stephen A. Smith Show. By the way, if you missed any of the show today, go check it out on demand in the Stephen A. Smith podcast, brought to you by Capital One. Capital One is reimagining banking, offering accounts with no fees or minimums that can be opened in 5 minutes. Capital One, what's in your wallet? I'll give you my number one on NBA MVPs. It's Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. Smith today on ESPN Radio.
Winter or summer, rain or shine, with the Peloton bike, it's always the perfect weather to sweat. And with up to 14 live rides a day and over 10,000 more on demand.
SiriusXM Channel 80 and on ESPN News, Will Cain, his sparring partner, sometimes buddy. You can catch me on First Take. You can catch me on ESPN Radio right after Stephen A. Weekdays 3 to 6. Filling in for him today. I don't have Paul George as my NBA MVP right now. In fact, I have him second. If I'm giving you a list of the top 3 NBA MVP candidates, it goes like this. At number 3, James Harden. And I can't impress upon you enough how impressive James Harden's offensive output is this year. I know the stat that everybody wants to talk about is the 31 straight 30-point games. But this is so much more impressive to me. I just laid it out, but I want to lay out for anybody who's just joining us. Of guys who have ever averaged over 36 points a game, and there are only 4 names who have averaged over 36 a game in a season. Harden is dead last in field goal attempts, free throw attempts, and minutes per game. That means he's getting his 36 efficiently. The other names to do it are Chamberlain, Elgin Baylor, and Jordan. Harden doing it more efficiently than those names. Want to know what he ranks first in? Effective field goal percentage, true shooting percentage, and assists per game. He is efficient, and he is spreading that ball around more than other guys at any level, at any point in history, who have scored this prolifically. And although he plays a little more defense, you got to play more to get past Paul George, who's at number 2 on my NBA MVP list, who's doing it both at the offensive and defensive end, and propelling his team, along with Russell Westbrook, to greater winning heights than the Rockets. But at number 1, on my NBA MVP list, at number 1 is a guy that I think is absolutely and utterly unstoppable, even without a three-point shot. The NBA MVP right now is Giannis Antetokounmpo. The guy is simply jaw-dropping. 6'11", and if he ever gets an inkling in his mind, like the hint of an idea that he wants to get to the hoop, you're done. It's over. He's going to get there. He, by the way, is like 25th in the league in steals, and he's also 15th in the league in blocks. Because, he's tall. The point I'm getting at is he plays defense as well. Giannis Antetokounmpo is unstoppable. As soon as he gets that outside shot, it's lights out. It's game over. It's the most unstoppable force in the NBA, and it might already be anyways. And he's willing the Bucks to the best record in the league. Giannis is your MVP. Cole in Pennsylvania. What's up, Cole? You're on the Stephen A. Smith Show with Will Cain.
Hey, how's it going, man? Appreciate you taking the call.
You bet.
I agree with you on the Giannis being up there. Also wanted to say that Embiid, I believe, also should be acknowledged in that same debate. But about Harden being the most efficient, I think we got to remember that the other ones didn't have the three-point line or had the ability to use it even as efficiently as he does. So,
well, Jordan had the three-point line. But the stat that you should think of, everybody in their head has this thing about Harden. Oh, he's getting cheap points. He's getting cheap points. He's always getting those fouls. Among these guys, lowest in free throw attempts. Let's go to another Cole quickly. Cole in Georgia, what's up, man? You got about 30 seconds.
Hey, I just wanted to call in. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Are you allowed to do this? Are you allowed to call into a separate radio show even if I'm hosting it? Is that how this – I think this is against the rules, Cole.
That's what I was calling in to find out, quite honestly. Because my whole point was I agree that Giannis is the best. He's the best two-way player in the game.
He's amazing. All right, Cole. I think you're going to get a pass here. There's a very strict rule. Cole's not allowed to call other shows than the Will Cain Show. But today, if Will Cain is hosting the Stephen A. Smith Show, you get a pass, Cole. You won't be put on trial. And I'm like, I don't know, guys. How are widgets selling today? It's just an instinct. I don't know. I'm like, why am I missing it? If everybody agrees about something, we're all missing something. So yesterday, when the announcement of the Joe Flacco trade from the Baltimore Ravens to the Denver Broncos came out, I found myself with everybody. I'm like, this makes no sense. It's a treadmill of mediocrity. It's a hamster churning a wheel from average to average. What's the point, and why spend a pick on it? So then I said, okay, let's step back, because I got to be missing something, because I'm with everybody. I'm like on the side of the room that's tilting from the weight of everybody standing in agreement. So I'm missing something. What's going wrong? There is one guy at ESPN who probably has, I don't know if it's a similar instinct or aversion to being in the crowd, who is that way more than me, and I knew I could rely on today to help me see what I'm missing when it comes to Flacco and John Elway and the mismanagement of the quarterback position in Denver. That guy is the undefeated's Dominique Foxworth, who's hanging out with me today in studio on the Stephen A. Smith Show. What's up, man?
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. That instinct that you have is a good one, because there's value there. There's something to be learned there. There's nothing valuable about not challenging people. Like, I think political teams have something called a red team. When you come up with an idea, it's the obligation of the red team to punch holes in it.
Right.
And I mean, that is a valuable service. Just following people around like that's useless.
You're a lemming.
Yeah, who wants to be that? And even if you're wrong, you force other people to tell you why you're wrong, and that's valuable. That's good for them. That's good for you. It's good for the audience. It's good for everybody.
And worst case scenario, right? Say you're not a lemming. You might be standing on the cliff by yourself, but at least you didn't go over with everybody, right? You might be lonely, but you'll be alive.
And it's very easy to be like, oh, my bad, I was wrong. You guys still got some room over there for me? That can happen.
So that being said, talking to Dominique Foxworth here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. I think you're wrong. I'm going to go with the lemmings over the cliff here on this one, because I just don't get it, man. I don't get the point in what Elway's doing in Denver. I don't get the point in Joe Flacco. I don't understand. Help me see the light.
So there's two things to discuss here. One is, was it a smart move to get Joe Flacco? I think there's plenty of reasons to argue that it's not. It's two, John Elway is trash and they need to move on. That's the one that's upset me more than anything, because I just looked at John Elway's experience. Put aside the fact that he's the best quarterback, best player in that franchise's history who brought them 2 Super Bowls. I understand that should not factor into the job that he's done. But you can't argue that he has been unsuccessful as a GM. 3 years ago, he won a Super Bowl with, the words I used on Get Up this morning was, with the desiccated husk of Peyton Manning and with a coach who had health issues and took a sabbatical essentially the year after. That was because of the talent that he acquired. Von Miller, guys like that he drafted. That was the talent that he acquired. Peyton Manning had 104 yards and an interception in the Super Bowl. Like, that was not, and people like to say, well, Peyton Manning got him his only success. Okay, the year before, true, but not the year they won the Super Bowl. That was a team that was built around the defense that John Elway put together. So there are 12 teams in this league that have never won a Super Bowl, and plenty of teams that haven't won a Super Bowl in a long time. You have a general manager who was able to put together a Super Bowl winning franchise just 3 years ago. Calm down.
Okay. However, since that Super Bowl, the argument I would make in return to you is he has mismanaged the most important position on the roster. Right. And if you think there's one thing that John Elway ought to be able to do, it's identify and develop the quarterback position. Right. Since he pulled off getting Peyton Manning from free agency to the Broncos, it has been Brock Osweiler, and I don't know that I'm going to get these sequentially or chronologically, but Brock Osweiler, Trevor Siemian, Case Keenum, now Joe Flacco. Who am I missing? Kyle Orton was in there.
Yep.
This has been pretty much
Paxton Lynch.
Oh, never forget drafting Paxton Lynch 27th overall.
That might have been the worst move of them all.
It was either that one or, Dominique, the one he got away with, which was giving Osweiler a big contract that he only got bailed out of because the Texans would give him more.
Very true.
He has mismanaged. Mm-hmm. He has not identified talent. He has not developed the quarterback position. Okay. And that is a pretty large indictment going on. It feels like more than 3 years, honestly. It's going on 4 years or something like that.
Well, it was the Super Bowl's 2016 was the actual year when they won it. It was the 2015 year
season,
in 2016. So it was just 3 years ago. But I understand that, and I think he deserves criticism. However, managing the quarterback position is the toughest thing to do. Lots of teams have done that, have failed at doing that without also bringing a Super Bowl. And a lot of people try to give the credit to the success that he had to Peyton Manning as if he's not responsible for getting Peyton Manning there. His resume and his relationship with Peyton Manning has value. That's the reason why that's part of the reason why Peyton Manning came, was because John Elway's there. So he deserves credit for that also. And I agree, mismanaging. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, no doubt. I like what you said. It's a lot of teams mismanage the quarterback position. So you can't hold somebody to the perfection standard. Right. However, have many mismanaged it worse than the Broncos?
Does it matter?
Like you make a nice argument. Okay, they haven't been the best. I have to respond in kind. But haven't they been the worst?
I wouldn't go as far as to say that they've been the worst. They've been bad. And I think that he deserves criticism, and I think that his seat should be a little warm. But the idea that if they don't succeed this following season, he has to go, I think is just a bit too aggressive.
I just think it's going to be one too many misses at the quarterback position. Talking to Dominique Foxworth here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. Smith. So let's talk about if it's going to succeed for him. He makes a trade for a mid-round pick for Joe Flacco from the Baltimore Ravens. You played for the Ravens, spent several years in the league at the defensive back position. You know something about who's good and who's bad at quarterback. Is Joe Flacco going to work out for the Broncos?
I don't have a ton of confidence.
There.
I don't have a ton of confidence in Joe Flacco working out there. And I was drafted and played 3 years in Denver. I love that place and that organization also. I don't have a ton of confidence in Joe Flacco considering his track record. However, I do think it's unfair that people are saying that he is the same as Case Keenum. Like, it seems like we are selective when we want to give that Super Bowl bump to somebody. He's done it at the highest level. He had quite possibly the best playoff run a quarterback has ever had. That is worth something. That is worth some cachet in the locker room, some confidence, and some value. I think that their division is going to be too hard for them to succeed, and they have too many other holes on this team. Joe Flacco is the guy that you plug in a situation where you're like, all right, we have great receivers, we have a great running back, we have a great defense. Joe Flacco's going to get us over the top. He's not the guy that's going to lift you over the top on his back.
Yeah, I mean, but that playoff run, those experiences, they're the outlier. Like, it's not a mystery who Joe Flacco is. We can look up any, by the way, including those Super Bowl runs, any regular season. And he's about, 20 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 15 interceptions. He is right above or below the median average level of quarterback in the NFL.
Well, but let's not pretend that it's not an upgrade. It was just on the screen for the TV show was him next to Case Keenum. The matchup statistically, they're almost equal. Joe Flacco may be a little bit above. But you take the one who has the Super Bowl MVP trophy and one of the greatest playoff runs.
Yeah, if you're reaching in a bucket and they're equal in what you're picking, but you had to trade let's call it a fourth, whatever a mid-round pick means.
Right, yeah.
A fourth for Joe Flacco. You're right. So they're statistically roughly the same. Flacco has the experience of winning a Super Bowl. That's going to give him a slight advantage, and you're picking him over Keenum.
Right.
Now, factor in, I had to give a fourth for that slight advantage. And by the way, he's a guy who has shown in the past year he's not that interested in helping a rookie quarterback that you draft.
Oh, yeah. No, I understand that, and I think that might be the most damning thing. I think it's giving up a mid-round pick it's valuable, but I understand doing that to upgrade even the tiniest bit at the position that we consider most important. But I think that they'd be better served, which I know we don't talk about tanking in the NFL, but they'd be better served playing it out with a worse roster and maybe catching Tua in the draft. I think that's what Denver fans should be more concerned about, because Joe Flacco, not only is he not going to take you to the Super Bowl this year, you may not make the playoffs in that division, and he's not a long-term solution. You're just making you're postponing the inevitable. Joe Flacco's going to make you mediocre, and then you're not going to be able to get that top quarterback that you want. So I think that is what you can disagree with John Elway the most for, is that he's putting off the inevitable in order to try to save face.
Talking to Dominique Foxworth of the Undefeated here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. I actually love the point you just made. So let's talk young quarterback. Tua, is he worth tanking for?
Yeah. I think given the fact that you can get that's the model. Young quarterbacks. That's the model to make it either you have Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, or you get a guy who's pretty good and really inexpensive and you build around him. That's the model to make a deep run in the NFL right now. So getting somebody who is pretty good. I would say that Tua is better. I think Haskins is a guy coming out now that's better than pretty good. Obviously, if you wait a couple more years, you're going to get Trevor, who I think is probably the best of all the names that we mentioned. I think it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it.
What about Kyler Murray?
I like Kyler Murray. I'm high on Kyler Murray. I was one of the first on the football first bandwagon for Kyler Murray because the statistics don't support what people say about his height. The bat down numbers are not higher for shorter guys, and he's had success in the same system as Baker Mayfield. Lincoln Riley said he was better than Baker Mayfield. He put up better numbers than him in the same system at that height. He'll figure a way how to make it work. I don't think that the height is an issue as much as I think it's a factor that he's lived with his entire life. He's figured out how to work with it, and it's somewhat of a disadvantage to the defense. As a defensive player, when I'm playing off coverage or if I'm playing zone, I'm keying the quarterback. If I can't get a 3-5 step read because I can't see him, that hurts me. That hurts me.
For some reason, that's funny to me.
Oh, no, it's funny.
Where's the quarterback? I can't see him behind the offensive line.
Drew Brees is a guy who I remember. You like I mentioned, you read 3 to 5 step drop. If you are breaking on a guy, you want to check the quarterback to make sure he's throwing to your guy so you don't get caught double move. Like, you need to be able to find the quarterback when you're not in press coverage. And Drew Brees is a guy that I remember covering a guy, and then the ball just came out. I don't know where it came from. I don't know where he was in the pocket, but it just came out. So
like
it's
out of
tougher
a hole
for
in
him.
the ground. Like out of a hole in the ground, a ball comes flying.
Obviously, it'd be nice for the quarterback to be able to see over, but it also would be nice to be able to see them.
Oh. All right, you said Tua pretty good. You said Dwayne Haskins better. I can't remember the exact words you used. So if I gave you, I want to expand this to 2 years worth of drafts. We don't know. We know Tua is not until next year, but there's already conversations about should you tank for Tua and
Trevor Lawrence,
and that's another year after that, unless he goes to the AAF. What do you think?
Did you see that highlight? The one highlight that everyone's watching the AFF is a quarterback getting his head knocked clean off.
So they're not going to go there?
Nah, don't do that. Go ahead and hang out.
I'm in on the AAF. Are you not in on it?
I'm not in on the AAF. No.
Come on.
I'm not out on it. I'm just not in on it. Like
we need more football. We love football.
We don't need more football.
We do.
We do love football, but we don't need more football. Part of the reason why we love football is because it's a scarce commodity.
I get that, but I made this argument to Max Kellerman the other day on First Take. I get the whole scarcity argument.
Right.
Once a week is the scarcity. We don't have games. Actually, it's Thursday, Sunday, Monday. So
right, but it's still great.
That's the part that's hurting the scarcity of the NFL. Spring doesn't do anything to it. I said, Burger King ends up helping McDonald's. It's not like there's only a certain amount of hamburgers to sell,
right?
And one guy gets it, the other guy doesn't. It increases the number of hamburgers people are eating in general. You see what I'm saying?
Did you watch
that competition? I did.
And you're going to continue to watch it?
I'm going to watch it this week.
So I just don't want to be lying to people. I would love for AAF to be successful because more successful sports is good. That creates more jobs for players, more stuff for us to talk about and see around. But I'm not going to lie and pretend like I was excited for it. I didn't watch one AAF game, and I don't plan on watching one. It doesn't get me going. I'm sorry.
It's well, at least for the first weekend, more exciting than an NBA regular season game, according to viewers.
I'm not surprised by that, but we'll see. Let's talk about week one next year.
Go back now, setting the AAF aside. Go back. Haskins, Murray, Tua. So that's 2 years worth right there. You put those in order for me of what you like the most.
Haskins, Murray, Tua. I'll keep it like that.
Really?
I think so. Yeah. I think as much as I talk trash about how I hate people who are absolute about the height of Kyler Murray, I think that Haskins' ability is something that coaches are more comfortable coaching around. So I think that he will end up finding it's more likely that he'll find a coach that's comfortable with him than Kyler Murray is to find a coach that's comfortable with him.
Well, we don't have to be theoretical about this. Dominique Foxworth here on the Will Cain Show. I think Kyler Murray should go number one overall.
Okay, I think the best Kyler Murray is better than the best Dwayne Haskins.
And the best Kyler Murray would happen under a coach who's willing to tailor his offense to the skills Kyler Murray presents, the history, the offensive philosophy, the air raid that Cliff Kingsbury will hopefully install in Arizona. He should be the number one overall pick by the Arizona Cardinals.
I agree. And it's not just a coach that's willing, it's a coach that is able.
Yes.
Football coaches aren't as smart as we pretend that they are.
Oh, you mean I meant able as in empowered. I don't know that the Cardinals will empower Cliff Kingsbury.
So I believe able as empowered and also able as in has the mind to do so. I think Cliff Kingsbury has the mind to do so. Is he empowered enough to do so? He should lay his entire career on the table to get Kyler Murray if he believes in Kyler Murray. You don't get a ton of chances at this. And a guy like Cliff Kingsbury, who the odds are stacked against him already, I would do whatever I had to do. I'd give money back to the Cardinals if I could convince them to move on and I would work for free to let me get the guy that I want if I thought that was going to make me successful.
Because otherwise, you're going to fail at something that wasn't your situation to succeed in.
Right.
I believe the Bidwells and Steve Keim, if they don't allow Cliff Kingsbury to draft Kyler Murray, there was no point in hiring Cliff Kingsbury in the first place. You're half measuring, half stepping, half assing this.
Right.
Do the full Cliff.
Yeah.
Do the full air raid.
I'm all in.
Get Kyler Murray. Trade Josh Rosen, which, by the way, you're going to find a market for Rosen. Yeah. You're going to get assets back.
That's assuming that Cliff Kingsbury actually wants Kyler Murray. If you remember the quotes that everyone is hanging on to now was what Cliff Kingsbury was saying about Kyler Murray when they were heading into a game against them. Like, coaches are liars.
It sounded like he liked him, though.
No, I agree. It sounded like he liked him.
I believe that more than him today saying, Josh is our guy.
Yeah. That's the thing that makes me think that he really wants Kyler more than anything is when they asked him to reaffirm his love for Josh. He's like, yeah, Josh, you're our guy. A lot of things happen before the draft. Okay. I know what that means.
Right. Good. You speak what a politicians speak, right?
Yeah, I'm able to decipher it.
Okay, so by the way, I've got another example of that. Dominic Foxworth here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Will Cain filling in, talking about Kyler Murray, talking about GMs and what you can hear when they don't say things. I agree with you. When Cliff says, Josh is our guy, pause, a lot of things happen before the draft. That second sentence totally defeats the first.
I love you, baby, but Vegas gets crazy.
That's good. So when Dave Gettleman, GM of the New York Giants, said after the season, we didn't sign Odell to trade him, I feel like that's also a non-answer. Yeah. And then when pressed, said, you heard my answer. No, I'm giving you another opportunity to say Odell is a Giant. That's why he's here. Now we have the reports today. It's not a report. It's Jay Glazer, NFL insider, Fox Sports, and The Athletic, who asked for a bold prediction, said, here's one for you. I believe the Giants will trade Odell Beckham Jr. Do you think that's just Jay writing a good column and trying to come up with something creative, or do you think there's something there?
No, I think there's something there. Again, what I don't understand is why the coaches and general managers can't just commit to the full lie. Like, just go ahead and lie if you're going to lie. Why? What are you trying to protect? Because you can always go back and say, oh, I meant it when I said it. However, we got an offer that we couldn't refuse. Like, it seems like they're creating this turmoil when it's unnecessary. I would much rather them be honest with the players and be honest with all of us. But I could see them moving on from Odell Beckham if the price is right. I don't think that they love Odell Beckham in the way that Odell Beckham feels like he deserves to be loved. I think they would rather move on from him and
Why? Just what do you think's the issue?
I think there's it's similar to the Kyler Murray situation. There are people who have hard and fast beliefs about their way that certain things are supposed to be done. Quarterback's supposed to be this tall. Our best player's supposed to talk like this, behave like this, look like this. And I think that Odell Beckham makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And if you don't have success and you have a lot of money tied up in a guy who you think is part of the reason why you're not successful, I think they would be ecstatic to move on from him if they could get as much as they want.
Dominic Foxworth with me here. Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. Smith, brought to you by mycomputercareer.edu, training for a better life. You're definitely a defender of players. You are player-centric. I'm probably management.
I mean, I'm not ashamed of it. I've worked at a couple at both the NFL and the NBA unions. I have the player. That's one of the things I hate.
Labor on management.
One of the things I hate most about ex-players.
Why?
That get into this is they forget. It doesn't take them long to get brainwashed, and they start believing all this bull hockey that they would be upset by when they were players. I'm gonna try to never let that happen to me, and I'll call them out when they do it.
Yeah, but I like it because it's a source of disagreement between you and me. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you're holding on to it. But here's what I said earlier, filling in for Stephen A. in the first hour of this show. All my instincts are, you don't need a diva talented wide receiver. You don't need that kind of level receiver. I look at the Patriots. I've come off of that. I saw the value of Amari Cooper to the Cowboys. I value intangibles, work ethic, sacrifice, selflessness more than amazing all-world talent. I'm a Brady over Rodgers guy, right? Mm-hmm. But I can set all that aside and say the Giants would be morons if they traded Odell Beckham Jr. They would be morons. And by the way, I don't think they could get that much.
Yeah. So how do these things coexist in your mind? I don't understand how you can say
because life is a balancing act.
Right. No, I agree, but it seems like those are such contradictory points that I believe.
Odell.
You said you explained Odell Beckham and said I don't believe in Odell Beckham, essentially. And they said, but they'd be dumb to get rid of him.
Well, if you told me they could get 3 number ones, maybe even 2 number ones, now you're talking. I don't think they can get that. Here's the thing, Dominique. I don't think they can get that. So now you're talking about selling Odell for what? A late one, maybe, or something? No. That's the balancing act I'm talking about.
Okay, but if you believe that all of those bad intangibles are things that hurt your team, then wouldn't you be better off to get him off your team if you even get nothing? Like, you think that those things are detracting from your team?
Well, but then I have to balance that again against the talent he offers on the field.
So you think?
So, for example, with Antonio Brown, I think that balancing act is leaning much more heavily to it might be better if he's not there. Right. And by the way, I think Antonio Brown's amazing on the field. But Odell's off the field stuff, that's not. Antonio may be suspended next year, right? I mean, that's the kind of stuff you're dealing with and factoring in with Antonio. Odell doesn't have that.
But I think so. As long as we agree that it's a feel issue, it's not a fact absolute. Like, I think you agree that you can win with those guys. You would just rather not win that way.
I just think it's something to overcome that I factor in. Sometimes I think a guy like you wants to pretend like that doesn't matter.
No, it certainly matters. But I think that you would rather overcome the lack of talent using the intangibles, whereas I would rather get guys in who can ball and make sure that we focus on the right things.
You'd rather have Rodgers. You'd rather have Rodgers than Brady?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd rather have Brady than Rodgers every day.
I can't see those intangibles. I can't feel them. I can't touch them. That's funny to me because those things, you seem like you are a very practical person.
Well, yeah, I know how you see them and touch them. They manifest in 6 trophies right now in New England.
Okay, that's a gross mischaracterization.
Sooner or later, they manifest. That's the point.
There are lots of guys
into something like that.
There are lots of guys who are hungry and work hard. Not lots of guys have 6 touchdowns. Brady is really talented too.
Excuse me, 6. Lots of guys have 6 touchdowns.
That's very true.
All right, man. Good hanging out with you as always. The undefeated's Dominique Foxworth. Thank you.
Jason Garrett forever.
That's another one of his against the grain takes. The Cowboys should keep Garrett. You can go. You can leave. Whatever you want. See you, bud. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, making it easy to bundle your home and car insurance. All right, when we come back on the Stephen A. Smith Show, we'll lay out for you. We'll take your calls. Let's get you in on Joe Flacco, John Elway, and Odell Beckham Jr. next on the Stephen A. Smith Show.
Craving even more of Steve.
In a game between the Golden State Warriors and the Portland Trailblazers, a game that the Blazers won, Draymond Green was called for a flagrant foul. It wasn't a flagrant foul, but he was called for one. And Steve Kerr, his coach, went absolutely bananas. Kerr broke a clipboard, slammed a clipboard, chased the ref down, yelled at the ref, threw his arms around, was pulled away by Kevin Durant at some point because Steve Kerr didn't believe it was a flagrant foul. And it wasn't. Draymond was going for the ball. He was, yes, probably not too worried about committing a foul. And they made a body check and his arm made some contact as well. But it wasn't violent. It wasn't over the top. It wasn't flagrant. But Draymond Green's reputation preceded him on that play. The last time he did this, his reputation lingered. I'm not even going to tell you it's right or wrong. I just know this. It's the way life works. It's the way everything works. It's the way it works for you. You go around throwing tantrums in your office. What do you think's going to happen next time you even raise your eyebrows? You're like, oh, boy, here we go again. There goes Billy. Got his opinions during the management meeting. Look at Bubba, twisting off again about the way things are being run. Here comes Nuno. How dare you insult the job Nuno's been doing? His reputation's preceded him. He's done it one too many times. It's going to be there when it's over. Draymond Green got a reputation call last night on that flagrant foul. And you can be mad about it. You can say it's not fair. But really, honestly, the response should in fact be, that's the way it is. If you were worried about it, if you wanted to get the benefit of the doubt, if you wanted to get the right calls, well, you probably shouldn't have done the things that led up to it. You want a new reputation, Draymond? You want a new standard? You want to get the right calls? You got to put some runway between you and the last incident. You're going to have to put some runway down. You're going to have to start building that reputation back. You're going to have to be known as a guy who's got it under control, who's calm, cool, collected. That's the only way, man, because complaining and going on about it is only going to reinforce where we are today. It's only going to reinforce you getting more of those exact kind of calls. Again, it isn't about whether or not it's right or wrong. It's just the way that it is. If you missed any of the show today, go check it out on demand in the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast, brought to you by Capital One. Capital One is reimagining banking, offering accounts with no fees or minimums that can be opened in 5 minutes. Capital One, what's in your wallet? 888-729-3776. You can join me, Will Cain, filling in for Stephen A. today. Let's hit the phone lines, talk to some of the people. Let's go with Cash.
Piss poor call.
It was a bad call, Cash, but
It was a terrible call. Listen, put a skirt on him. My father played for the AFA, American Parochial League, and he could throw it down better and badder than James LeBron. He was the king, the big C. Fine. He didn't give a shit about.
Whoa! I got to tell you, I don't know who's on the board. Kat, you got that? If you didn't see that coming, Kat, you are blind. You had your finger on the button? You had to have, because that thing was being telegraphed from a mile away. That plane had circled the tower 3 times and was flashing its lights telling you, I'm about to land this F-bomb in any minute. And that big 747 came flying down to the runway, and there were you, Kat, ready with the safety net. Nice job. Whew, her dad could play basketball like James LeBron. Amazing. Dennis in Pennsylvania. What's up, Dennis? You're on the Stephen A. Smith Show.
Hey, Stephen. Hey, Will Cam. I'm a big fan. First time caller.
Thank you.
Calling about, the Pittsburgh situation. We're all talking about what are we going to do. Things people don't realize is that, not only have we lost Le'Veon, we've lost AB. We lost our coaches. Joey Porter's gone. We lost the 5-time coach, Mike Munchak, who I think he was coach of the year for offensive line 5 years in a row. I mean, what's going on out there? I mean, it's got to be, and I'm thinking is it administration?
All right,
something's going on.
I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you, Dennis. I'm gonna tell you. Okay, it's process of elimination. It's logic 101 at some point. I'm not trying to be smug or condescending about that stuff because sometimes I think people feel like logic is condescending. It's not. And if you see the connections and you point it out, you're just the messenger. Here's the thing. You have, as you point out, an accumulation of problems in Pittsburgh, from the wide receiver to the running back, to the offensive lineman talking about the running back, to the quarterback who has a problem with the wide receiver. You have problems in the locker room. You have problems on the sideline. You have problems on the practice field whenever Antonio Brown decides to show up. And then you have problems on game day where you have to suspend a guy for being a no-show in Antonio Brown. People don't, and I referenced this the other day on the Will Cain Show while doing my show, from one of my favorite movies, Hell or High Water. People don't start out robbing banks. That's a line from the movie. They graduate to it, right? They start out with petty crime. Petty crime turns into something a little larger, and then one day you look up and you just robbed a bank. Parenting is the same way. You don't all of a sudden find a kid at the age of 10 who completely ignores everything you have to say, is completely insolent, and acts up unless you had years leading up to it where you let the little things slide. Little things compound to more little things, compound to more, until they become a big thing. That's what's happened in Pittsburgh. Little things have accumulated. Mike Tomlin has made it clear, if you're really good like Antonio Brown, if you're really good like Le'Veon Bell, you got different treatment. And that's fine because that's part of life. That's pragmatic. Jimmy Johnson used to say when he was coach of the Dallas Cowboys that the 53rd guy on the roster didn't get the same kind of treatment as Troy Aikman or Emmitt Smith. And you can do that. But it's going to pay the price at some point. It's going to catch up. And all those little slides, all that little stuff is going to turn into a big one. What I'm getting at is the logic leads you to this. The process of elimination leads you to this. You got a leadership problem in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin, who I like, who I think is a good coach, who has performed better than most coaches in the NFL, has let little things slide for so long that you now have big things. And if you think Le'Veon Bell not showing up or Antonio Brown being suspended aren't big things, or Ben Roethlisberger, the centerpiece of your franchise, having problems with people aren't big things, you're blind. And you got to recognize the little things that allowed us to get to here. Tomlin is good, and somebody could call in, and people have, and tell me he's better than this guy, better than this guy. Look what the Steelers have done compared to this franchise. Doesn't matter. Have they underachieved? Have they achieved to the level they should have? To the Steelers standard? To their talent standard? The answer is no, 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 no. And it's because you got to live in Pittsburgh. Let's hit one more. Jared in Colorado. What's up, Jared?
Hey, two things, Will, and then I'll hang up and listen. One, nobody on the national stage is talking about the Broncos ownership and what's going on with that story. By 2021 or 2022, a lot of the local guys that are in the know or have close relationships are saying that one of the daughters is going to end up taking over. Mm-hmm. So a lot of what the front office is doing with Elway and those guys is trying to get something done before that changes, because the thought is that those guys will be out or they'll be in for a year until she can name kind of her own team and her own leadership group to go in there. And two, if you look at the first 9 games last year before Flacco got hurt, he was actually better on third down efficiencies and in the red zone than Keenum was.
Oh, man.
And that's 2 areas that we really struggled hard in last year as with the Broncos.
I hear you,
third down
Jared.
efficiencies and converting. So
I hear you, but I feel like you're looking for a silver lining there, man. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be able to see the big upside in Joe Flacco over Case Keenum, and I'll happily be the guy that's wrong when it's proven out on the field, if it's proven out on the field. As to what the Broncos' plan is, that's pretty fascinating, because if it's true, and if the Broncos have like a 2-year plan for reboot in place and potentially changing leadership, add them now to the Dolphins as teams that seem to be putting a plan together, not for this coming season, but for seasons to come. And while we might not go all the way as saying these teams are tanking, you might be looking at teams who are now set up or trying to set themselves up to be in the Tua sweepstakes, to tank for Tua, or to be in the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes, the tank for Trevor. Does that kind of process work in the NFL? I'll answer that when we come back. It's Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. Smith on ESPN Radio.
Gentlemen, you've been sitting around for too long.
When asked for one big, bold prediction this NFL offseason, if it's true, as he suggested, the New York Giants could trade Odell Beckham Jr., I just want to know what's the plan. Like, tell me how that makes sense. What do you think you're going to get, and how's that going to fit with a young quarterback that hopefully, surely, you have a plan to draft in New York, be it Dwayne Haskins or Kyler Murray? You can't keep passing on your chances at the top of the draft to get a future franchise quarterback. So what's the plan? Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. Smith today on the Stephen A. Smith Radio Show. You can normally catch me 3 to 6 Eastern Time on ESPN Radio, SiriusXM Channel 80, and on ESPN News, where you can watch me talk. I'm going to be hanging out here today and tomorrow filling in for Stephen A. But I want to return to this, what's the plan? And I want to return to it when it comes to New York, but not with the Giants, because Stephen A's producer, Jonathan Winthrop, and I like the way that Stephen A. does it. My producer, John Winthrop, says his name twice, front and last name. John said this, hey, do you think the Knicks are losing at such a historic level that is going to deter free agents from coming there? Like, they've got this plan in place to bring in some big-time free agents. They got the cap slots, the max cap slots, but could they be losing to such an extent that you got to get deodorant to make this attractive to anybody? No, John. No, this is the plan. The Knicks have a plan. Now, you can say, what in the world are you trading Kristaps Porzingis for? And as a kid who was born and raised outside Dallas, Texas, I say thank you. Thank you for Kristaps. But I also get it from the New York side. If you want to play the lotto, you got to buy a ticket. This was the Knicks buying their ticket. The ticket is getting KD and or Kyrie. And if it's both, you hit it over the fence. If it's one or the other, the plan is working, it's in place, and you add a Jimmy Butler or somebody else along with it. If it's neither, you struck out, and you're going to have to face the music. But part of that plan, and I understand we're dealing with idealism here, I understand we're dealing with literal lotto odds now, but would be KD, Kyrie, and Zion Williamson. The free agents know you're a reboot. They know it's a start from scratch. Maybe you can have Dennis Smith Jr. or Frank Ntilikina or Kevin Knox around the free agents you add, but hopefully you have Zion Williamson with that. And if you got to win nothing more than 10 games, then that's so be it. You got to do what you can do to get the odds at the highest position, to get that young player, and to get those free agents in. No. I don't think this losing is a problem for the Knicks. I think it's part of the plan. Hopefully, for the Knicks, they have a plan. I'd ask the same of the Giants when it comes to Odell Beckham Jr. Need seats to a game? Download the Vivid Seats app and enter promo code CHAMPS, CHAMPS, at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Don't buy just any seat. Get a Vivid seat. It's Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. Smith. Let's hit the phone lines before we say goodbye today. Let's go to Chris in South Carolina. What's up, Chris?
Chris, I just wanted to say the Will Cain Show is one of the greatest, and it's being talked to about by Will Cain.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that.
I do. I watch you about every day. But I was wanting to talk about the football, but basketball come up, and I think at the end of the league, at the end of the year, James Harden's going to be MVP.
You do.
I do. But right now it's just a halfway point, and I'm with you on George, Paul George being offense and defense.
Right.
But at the end of the year, I believe Harden MVP.
All right. I appreciate the call, Chris. I appreciate the compliments. For the record, I'm James Harden, third. To go along with those points, you've got amazing efficiency. I'm Paul George, second, two-way player, but I am Giannis Antetokounmpo, first in MVP voting. It's been Will Cain.